could be replaced, but there weren't enough men to fight in them, let alone fly the planes from the factories to the bases where they were needed. But there was a solution.
But to keep the Royal Air Force on the offensive, aircraft must be flown each day between the factories, the maintenance depots and the aerodromes. The RAF can't take on the job. They're too busy on active service. It's done for them by the ATA.
The introduction of women into the ATA was the work of Britain's first female commercial pilot, Pauline Gower. But despite the shortage of pilots, Gower faced opposition from the very beginning.
She had rather a job, of course, convincing the men. And when they finally agreed, they chose only the very experienced pilots, and they were the first 8 women, who were mostly socialites, or millionaires, or that sort of thing. And they joined the ATA, and then she had to get a few more women in, and I was number 15. So we were all terribly keen now, thrilled to bits that there was a war. And when I joined, I was 5'1½". At the end, I was 5'3½". But after I joined, they made a rule that you had to be 5'6", because flying American Mustangs and bigger aircraft, you couldn't reach. Well, what I used to do is I couldn't strap myself in because I'd put all the logbooks at the back of me to push me forward, so I didn't really have any difficulty, except I couldn't strap myself in, hoped I didn't crash.
With the Battle of Britain at its height, the women acted as ambulance pilots in addition to ferrying planes from the factories. But when this propaganda film was made, the Battle of Britain was already over. Before this, those in authority had decided to keep their existence a secret from the enemy.
Hello. How about your hurricane? You'll have a time for it.
The British government said they didn't want the Germans to know that they were so desperately in need of pilots that they had to call on the women. And if that's not a put down, ask me another.
I suppose you know where the balloons are.
Well, we did up till yesterday.
If the propaganda films were less than complimentary to female intelligence, the women faced even greater derision from their male colleagues.
I think it's absolutely disgusting. It really is. I mean, they try to belittle us. They try to embarrass us and put us down, and all they can think of us is fluffy skirts and sitting in the cockpit and putting a lipstick and powder and all that on. But they didn't like us really at all. They accepted us, but they didn't like to think that they were big and looked very impressive like pilots, and we were silly little women, going and doing exactly the same job. And we had less accidents than the men, and I don't think they liked that. And then they didn't like the fact that apparently we ferried more aeroplanes than they did. They didn't like that. And but on the whole, they put up with us, and they all tried very hard to, sounds awful to say it on television, but get into bed with everybody if they could.
Newspapers depicted women pilots as sex objects, playing at a job that only men could take seriously.
Got caught with your flaps down, so to speak. With the ATA any hour between 0900 and 1600.
And some male egos couldn't stand the idea of female flyers in any capacity. The editor of Aeroplane magazine wrote at the time,
"We quite agree that there are millions of women in the country who could do useful jobs in war. But the trouble is that so many of them insist on wanting to do jobs which they are quite incapable of doing. The menace is the woman who thinks that she ought to be flying a high-speed bomber when she really has not the intelligence to scrub the floor of a hospital properly."
The powers that be said that women should be at the kitchen sink and having babies, and they were taking the jobs out of men's hands, and they didn't realise that it was necessary for us to have pilots.